All right. My name is Rich Schmidt. It's December 17th, 2025, and we're here with Ken Cook today. Ken is joining us via Zoom from his home in Bend, Oregon. And Ken, thank you so much for joining us today. And our first question to get you started is why wine?
Why wine? Well, good question. I would reflect on um, when I was a young adult and growing up. Uh, my father was really into wine. So you might say that I had a lot of positive experiences um, with people that were involved in wine and really had an appreciation for fine wines. And I was lucky enough to be introduced to that and or spoiled too at the same time. Um, so yeah, that's kind of how it started as a young adult, and everything just kind of blossomed from there. Um,
Let's talk about life a little bit before wine, then. Tell us about where you're born and raised and kind of your early life into school.
yeah, so I grew up in Southern California. Spent most of my young years in Orange County and went through grade schools and high school and did some college there. Worked various jobs. Back in my late teens and 20s, I was in the construction field for a while. I worked for my uncle's concrete company right out of high school and also went to college out of high school for a couple years. And at that time, my focus was on becoming a firefighter. And so I was attending what was then Rancho Santiago or Santa Ana College in Southern California, which had the best firefighting program back in the early '80s back then. And I went through about a year and a half of college for the fire academy that they supported, and I went through the fire academy, and then I got a job working as an industrial firefighter for Rockwell International at the time. Um, and I did that for a couple of years. And during that time, I was attempting to get on as a city or county firefighter also, which was just crazy back then. I mean, for every five jobs that would come available to a city or county in the Southern California or even California in general, there was about 1,500, 2,000 other applicants for just about every single position that would open. Yeah, it was absolutely crazy. And I went everywhere from Northern California, San Francisco, Berkeley area, through the whole testing process. And I did that for about a year and a half and was considering even moving out of state to try to get a job. Um, and then at that time, I guess I was getting a little frustrated with the whole process. I enjoyed my job as a firefighter for Rockwell International at the time. There was over 20,000 employees and 200 acres of property that we took care of at that time. But I just wanted to do a little bit more, which is why I was out looking around. And then I was at a party and I met this guy that was an aircraft mechanic in the Navy. And I was like, wow, that sounds kind of interesting. I had never thought about the military before. And growing up as a younger person, I was always involved with model airplanes, gasoline airplanes, building them, flying them, and kind of the mechanical side of me, I think, was starting to peak out. And I had considered going down and having a chat with an Air Force recruiter. Um, and so I did that, and it kind of opened my eyes to maybe a new direction at that time. And also with the frustration um, with the whole firefighting uh, situation, it seemed like a really cool thing to do. And lo and behold, I joined the Air Force with a guaranteed job at that time as a jet engine mechanic upon graduation from basic training. And so I did that.
What year was that?
That, see, I joined, it was called a delayed entry program at that time, and that was 1986. And then I actually entered the Air Force in 1988 and went through basic training in San Antonio, Texas at Lackland Air Force Base. Um, Upon finishing that, they send you to what they called then was a technical school. And they sent me to Chanute Air Force Base. And there I spent about 4 months in school full time, learning about aircraft and jet engines in particular, which was going to be my specialty. And it was fascinating. I was enjoying it completely at that time. Whole new direction, whole new career, and a plethora of possible places to end up. I got really excited towards my graduation from my technical school and jet engine school. They offered me the opportunity for my first location to go to Germany. And I was excited and said, hell yeah, that sounds great. And so I was looking forward to that. And lo and behold, I ended up in Frankfurt, Germany at Rhein-Main Air Base. That would have been 1989. And it was a 2 year commitment or a 2 year tour in Germany at that time. And then that opened up a whole plethora of new doors also, travel and kind of even circles back to appreciation for wine and beer and travel on an international scale. And I had a ball in Germany, traveling up and down the Rhine River and going to wineries and vineyards and beer festivals, castles, mountains, skiing, uh, Austria, Switzerland. I got to do a lot of traveling. I bought a car when I was there. I had a 1979 BMW 525 that I bought for like 1,600 bucks, man. And it was the coolest car. I could scream up and down the Autobahn at 140 miles an hour and nobody cared. Talk about crazy. But yeah, like life was good and very eye-opening to the different cultures, specifically wine, and to see how involved the community and the culture was revolving around wine and beer and things of that nature, food and yeah, super cool place.
What was the work like?
The work was great. I was specifically working on large transport aircraft in my time in the Air Force, of which I spent 10 years in the Air Force altogether. We'll get to the end of that here shortly, but I was working on C-130 transports, C-5 transports, and C-141 transports. So large cargo aircraft. Um, it was a blast. And, it's, I don't know, contrary to what probably a lot of people think, it's kind of like an 8 to 5 Monday through Friday job, um, during normal times. Um, so I was working on aircraft in the hangars and then, um, 1990, while I was in Germany, August of 1990, Saddam invaded Kuwait, and the United States armed services were getting ready to enter the first Persian Gulf War, or Desert Storm, Desert Shield, as it became called. And so myself and a lot of my comrades and our um, mechanics and Air Force people from Rhein-Main Air Base, we all deployed to the Persian Gulf. We deployed to Al Ain, which is in United Arab Emirates, and we ended up bringing 13 of our own aircraft there, all C-130s, cargo transport and troop transport aircraft for support for Desert Storm. Um, We lived in what we called Tent City. It was it was at a brand new what was going to be an international airport, but there was nothing there except a runway at that time. And so the U.S. military just kind of took over the airport, and we built a tent city there. There were several guard units from around the country there. By the time we all got there and populated, I think we had 40 aircraft there at that time. And what we would do is our aircraft were running around the entire Persian Gulf, Saudi Arabia, uh, Kuwait, and other places, moving troops around and moving equipment around and preparing for the air and ground war that would ensue a little bit later on towards December and January. About 5 months later, I was there a total of 6 months living in the tent in LA. Um, Pretty unique experience. Not all bad. Going to war, as most people would think, at least not for an Air Force guy. Now, if I were an Army grunt, I might tell you a different story. But we were far away from the action there, and living in tents, and things were actually pretty good for us. Although it was work days were 12 hours a day. We worked 6 days a week. We got one day off. So long hours. Um, but what a great experience. And we were able to go off base, had a couple of buses that would pick us up on our one day off a week, and we could go downtown, and they would drop us off at the Hilton Hotel, and they had a pool, and you could get food and beverages, um, and that was kind of nice too. And of course, as the war approached in December, the ground war, they locked us down to base. So all that stuff, but it was a cool opportunity to be able to see, that part of the world in the Middle East and the desert, and yeah, all in all, it was a really good experience.
So you said you were there for 6 months. What came after that? What happened after you left the desert?
Yeah, yeah, great question. So, um, as the ground war started, or the air war started and the ground war started, it went so fast. Saddam Hussein and all of his cronies, they pretty much gave up the ghost. And that all occurred in about 2 months. And so then at that time, I was nearing the end of my enlistment for my stay in Germany, even though we were still in the Persian Gulf. I had the opportunity to select a location to go to Anchorage, Alaska, to Elmendorf Air Force Base. And I was all excited about that. So I got to leave there in early February of 1991 and back to Germany, there for just a couple of months, basically for out processing and getting ready for my new assignment, which was going to be in Anchorage, Alaska. I had a stepsister and her family that actually lived in Anchorage, so I was excited to get back there and see what that new opportunity was like. And I did that and ended up staying in Anchorage then until 2004. Um, so yeah, I was there in the Air Force in Anchorage, working on the flight line there. Uh, Same aircraft, C-130s, C-5s, 141s, and I did that until well, I guess I should say I got married during that time. Um, And so I was there from 91 until 98 in the Air Force at Elmendorf. Um, During that time, um, I got really involved in a home brewing club in Anchorage there. Super great bunch of folks. And I was fermenting everything at home. It became kind of my main hobby at that time. My wife at that time got really involved too, and a lot of our friends brewing beer and making wine and making mead. And on a fairly advanced level, it was a really advanced club. And of course, at that time, the craft brew industry was really taking off, late 80s, early 90s time frame. Um, my mother and my stepfather during that time had left Southern California and they were living in Bend, where I currently reside. So I had the opportunity to come home on leave and visit with them quite often during that time frame. And got to visit the Willamette Valley wine country with my folks at that time, and that was just a really cool experience. I can remember going to ERAF back in the early '90s, and Rex Hill and Chateau Bonneau back in the day, Firesteed even. And anyways, had a great time touring the Willamette Valley wineries at that time. And I think that's really where I got bit really bad with the bug of Pinot Noir and Oregon Pinot Noir. I wouldn't have given it a second thought, from my earlier experience with my father. He was really into more Bordeaux varieties and big California reds. But man, once I saw what was happening here in Oregon and tasted the Pinots, I was just blown away. And I think that's when it got inside of my head. I thought, I got to get down to Oregon and be a part of this. And that just kept flashing in my head. over and over. My wife was at that time kind of thinking that that would be pretty cool too, since we'd been in Alaska for quite some time. The winters were starting to wear down on us a little bit, and we really enjoyed our travels when we would visit with my folks here in Bend and in Oregon in general. And so we kind of came up with a plan. Um, I guess I should mention also, not to make it confusing, but when I did get out of the Air Force in 1998, I got a really great job as an aircraft mechanic. I was working for Alaska State Troopers and Fish and Wildlife Protection, where I worked for almost 5 years as an aircraft mechanic there in Alaska, and that was a fantastic job and a great experience. Got to do a lot of traveling to the bush communities up there in Alaska with the troopers. Um, but my wife and I at that time were mulling over this idea that maybe we could relocate to Oregon. And I knew that at some point my time was going to come up, and I still had a GI Bill to utilize for education purposes. And so in the year 2000, that was kind of the big breakout. We came down to visit with my folks here in Oregon and rented a car and just took off. We went all the way down south, uh, pretty much to the California border, started at the Rogue Valley and worked ourselves all the way up and just checked out all the different wine growing regions and the great production regions and spent about a week in total doing all of that and enjoyed all the wines and the beautiful countryside and the people and the area tremendously. Made it all the way back up into the Willamette Valley, uh, back to Pinot Noir heaven again, and uh, came back over the hill to Bend to visit with my folks for a little while longer before we headed back to Anchorage. And that was kind of the start. We started putting things together and thought we should really seriously think about moving down there. And I'd really like to get into the wine making business down in Oregon. And so that's what we did. We started sorting out a plan. I had found out about the Chemeketa College program, which was the only thing happening at that time, back in 2000. And we figured out that I could use my GI Bill. I could go to the winemaking and viticulture programs at Chemeketa College. We'd be closer to my folks in Bend. We'd get out of our long winters in Alaska, and it would be something new. Just something new and something different, and something to satiate the passion for not just enjoying wine as a consumer, but wanting to get into the industry from the production standpoint and be a part of it. Enjoying it on a home scale from the hobby production side. I thought it would be a great decision. So that's kind of what led us up to getting down here. We put together a plan and we made it happen. And lo and behold, in April of 2004, we moved down here to the Willamette Valley, rented a house in Philomath, and I started school um, in August of 2004. My then wife was lucky enough to get a great job working for OSU in Corvallis, since we just lived down the street in Philomath. And I started going to school full time. And a year later, in 2005. Uh, Let me back up just one more minute. While I was going to school at Chemeketa full time between 2004 and 2005, we had visited the Flying Dutchman winery over on the Oregon coast in the Newport Depot Bay area there. And I had got to meet with Dick Cutler, Richard Cutler, who was the winemaker and owner of the Flying Dutchman winery um, back in 2004. And we hit it off real well and started talking, and I said, "Yeah, I'm a brand new wine student, and I'm in the process of learning. I live in Philomath." And he said, "Well, why don't you just come out and do some volunteer work with me?" And of course, I was thrilled, and Richard Cutler was a really cool guy, older guy, kind of had a similar process in his life where he got into the winemaking industry from the hospitality industry later in his life also. I think he was about 60 then. Um, but a wonderful guy. So I took him up on the offer and I started making my way out there on my days off from school and doing volunteer work and at the Flying Dutchman. And then in 2005, we're still living in Philomath, Oregon, and I ended up talking with, we had visited a few of the wineries there, and I just out of the blue just picked up the phone and called Cherry Hill Winery because it was such a cool place that we had visited and tasted wine. And I was lucky enough to get a hold of the then winemaker who was there, and I was talking with him and just wanted to let him know that I would be available also for some volunteer work or anything that might come up. That was Chris Luby at the time, 2005, early 2005. And next thing I know, I got a phone call from Chris Luby, winemaker at Cherry Hill, and he said, "Hey, I could use somebody to come out here and give us a hand. We got a bottling project coming out in August of 2005, and see if you want to come out and do that." And I was like, "Yeah, man, that would be outstanding. That would be really fun." I couldn't believe that it was him that called, and I was going to get to go hang out and work at Cherry Hill for a little bit. So I was still going to school full time, of course, and ended up hitting it off real well with Chris Luby. We were both the same age. I think we were 42 at the time, both of us. He had come from Firesteed, where he had spent some years on the winemaking team there. Um, And yeah, we got along really well, and the bottling went well. We were bottling the 2004 vintage for what was then Cherry Hill Winery's second vintage. Their first vintage was the 2003 vintage. So I was kind of lucky enough to get in the door there rather early in the Cherry Hill Winery's program. And then next thing I know, um, I got a call to come work in the cellar there uh, and do all the cellar work for the 2005 vintages, which they already had in the house. And I took them up on that. And lo and behold, I was working as much as I could at Cherry Hill and still going to school full time at Chemeketa at that time. But it all worked out really well. It was fascinating met a bunch of great people, was really enjoying the work. I couldn't think of anything I'd rather be doing. So it was a fantastic experience. Um, yeah, wow. So that brought us up to 2005 and just got my door or my foot in the door at Cherry Hill Winery, where unbeknownst to me at that time, I would end up spending the next 17 years and running the whole program at Cherry Hill Winery, which we can get into depth and talk about also. So, however you'd like to proceed from
Sure.
my foot in the door at Cherry Hill in 2005 and continuing on forward.
For sure. What an amazing way to get there. What an incredible path you took to get to Cherry Hill. Um, let's talk about. I'm curious about your time at Chemeketa. Obviously, you were coming in second career. What were your expectations of winemaking and viticulture? What the school would be like? What the process would be like? And how did Chemeketa compare to what you expected?
Super question. I'm really glad that you asked that, Rich. Wow, it was fantastic. And yeah, so second career kind of after 16 years as an aircraft mechanic. Um, Going to Chemeketa was super cool. I can't expand upon how excellent the program were and the people that were there at that time. Um, you had Barney Watson, who was in charge of the enology and winemaking part of the program. At that time, Barney was just a super cool dude. And then you had Al McDonald, who was one of the pioneers heading up the viticulture side and the vineyard management portion. So, two super knowledgeable, influential Oregon wine industry giants back in the day. Um, I enjoyed that program super, and the Northwest Viticulture Center, which it was called then, now of course Northwest Wine Studies Center. It's kind of was the only thing going at that time. There was 8 acres of teaching vineyard and a beautiful small state-of-the-art winery um, that that we got to utilize for the students and great camaraderie and great bunch of students. Everybody in the classes that were going through that program back then, I would say 90% of them were already in the Oregon wine industry, um, already working at wineries, already working in vineyards. And a lot of them were just kind of honing their craft, so to speak, uh, with, uh, with the program there. I can remember, it comes to mind, Stephen Westby from Witness Tree was one of my student comrades at that time. Brad Ford from Illahee was also in my class with me. Tony Giovingo, who's the owner of Giovingo Vineyards up in Carlton, was also in the classes with me, and him and I became very good friends. So yeah, it was a super way to really get a handle on what was happening in Oregon's wine industry at that time, which was going through a tremendous growth. Back then in 2005, 2004 and 2005, like when I first got here, there was 200 wineries in the entire state. Now we're at 1,000 and counting, right? So yeah, the growth period then was just tremendous. And yeah, I guess it was everything that I was hoping for and more. It was just a fantastic experience. So I ended up being in the program. It took me 3 years full time. So from '04 to 2007, But during those 3 years, as a full-time student, I got both both a degree in winemaking and a degree in vineyard management and viticulture. And it was a super experience because it just taught us everything from, from beginning to end as far as production in the field and in the winery, and just a great experience all around. Yeah, it was super, and I was super stoked about what future might lie ahead in this whole thing with this new decision and changes. My wife at that time, we had both just purchased a new home in Monmouth. Things were going well with her career at OSU, and there were quite a few growing entities happening at OSU at that time also, which I was lucky enough to be involved in. Um, even a lot of that had to do with the fact that my wife was working there. She was working at the library. And so I met with Patty Skinkis, uh, PhD, who was in charge of the whole viticulture program there. And yeah, it was super. And they were getting involved and having all kinds of different seminars that were coming out for wine industry people to be involved with. And OSU's part was growing tremendously, kind of to cater to the needs of the growing wine industry at the time. And yeah, it was a great time that I can reflect on to be a part of it during that growth period. Saw a lot of positive changes and a lot of positive growth, and just a lot of fun also.
That's so cool to hear. I love that. Tell me about the work itself. You mentioned volunteering at the Flying Dutchman. You mentioned kind of getting your foot in the door at Cherry Hill. Um, what was the work like? What was it like, sort of learning to do the work at the same time you were in a classroom? How did they compare and contrast what you were learning in the textbook versus what you started to do when you were doing the work?
Yeah, um, it was actually very relatable. Um, I mean, the Oregon viticulture book that had just been put out, and the whole book was written by Oregon vineyard people, that were involved. Each section of the book, I mean, it was the Bible, right? At that time, uh, everybody who was anybody in Oregon vineyard area had a hand in making the Oregon viticulture book. So super relevant in information. And also at that time, I was lucky enough to get really close and befriend, as I mentioned earlier, one of the guys, Tony Giovingo, who went on to start his own company, Giovingo Vineyards up in Carlton. At the time, he had a very small vineyard that was on his property in Carlton, and he was growing the grapes to sell, and it was all Pinot Noir. And being in the classroom together and with some of my knowledge with the actual winemaking, um, we decided, hey, let's make some wine with your grapes at your house. And that was kind of one of my first experiences doing that. So in the 2005 vintage, we made 2 barrels of Pinot Noir uh, at Giovingo Vineyards, and the wine turned out really nice for that vintage, considering it was one of the cooler vintages in 2005. And We liked it so much, and it was such a good experience. We did it again in 2006, and I mention this because it was not only a great experience and a super cool opportunity to do the whole winemaking process at a smaller level. I went out and bought a destemmer, and we got bins to ferment in, and I mean we did the whole thing like we it was a small winery almost, from start to finish. So that was occurring this whole time while I was in school and while I was getting my feet wet at Cherry Hill. So it was just another experience to mix it all in and just gain a whole bunch of more knowledge and do it on another level. Um, so yeah, the the program there at Chemeketa, I mean, talk about hands-on. I mean, um, at the Northwest Viticulture Center or Northwest Wine Studies Centers as it is now. I mean, if you were in the viticulture classes, you were in the vineyard from the time you walked in the door, you know, till the time you went home. And inversely, it was the same thing in the winemaking program with Barney Watson. And we harvested the grapes from the vineyard, from the 8 acres of teaching vineyard there at Chemeketa, brought them in, made wines, and I mean, they had every variety of grape under the sun. A lot of them were experimental at that time, seeing what's going to work, what's not going to work, and in our climate, which was considered a cooler climate at that time, and obviously still is, although it's gotten a little bit warmer these days, which really just I think lends itself to better, more consistent vintages. Uh, no complaints, right, in that respect, as far as climate change and things getting a little bit warmer than they used to be. But yeah, super relevant, super great program, super great people. I don't know if you had ever been introduced or knew about Bob Sogi was his name. He was involved in the Chemeketa program, and he was the guy that was doing the wine appreciation segment or portion, in which case your class consisted of tasting wine for 2 hours twice a week, But Bob Sogi was this super neat guy, retired from the wine industry. He had been with a big distributor house and had a huge wine cellar and collection of personal wines. This man was very unique, kind, sharing individual, not only with his knowledge, but the guy would bring wines, killer wines from his wine cellar and share them with us, the students, from his personal stash over the 30 years that he was in wine distribution. Um, so yeah, really neat experience and just his experience and sharing with all that and being a part of that Chemeketa program was also really cool. And gosh, I look back at those days very, very fondly and super demonstrative and learning a lot about wines in general. Uh,
So you mentioned getting into Cherry Hill, kind of at the start of Cherry Hill, as Cherry Hill was just getting off the ground, just on their second vintage. Tell me about Cherry Hill, about the program there, and take us through kind of the early days for you working as you started to actually work there. Um, what was it like? What was the work like, and what were your memories from kind of the first years there?
Absolutely. Yeah. So when Cherry Hill Winery was started, um, by Mike and Jan Sweeney, husband and wife. So a family-owned business. At that time, we had 90 acres of grapes at Cherry Hill Winery and Vineyard, uh, all Pinot Noir, no other varieties. So totally concentrated. The owners, Mike and Jan Sweeney, got their teeth cut on Pinot Noir, visiting the Burgundy region for years on end. They spent quite a bit of time there, and uh, to that end, they bought the property, which would become Cherry Hill Winery and Vineyard, and dedicated it solely to Pinot Noir production, and wanted to produce high-end Pinot Noir. There's 100 acres of grapes almost, like I say, 90 acres of Pinot Noir. Uh, Beautiful property. It had 8 cabins on the property, and they built a 12,000 square foot state of the art winery there, all gravity flow and gravity fed production style. At that time, it was just Chris Luby, who was the head winemaker. And I was only there for a few months, and the then vineyard manager, Scott Kreger was his name. He left, and I was offered the job as the vineyard manager. And so at that time, it was just Chris Luby and myself. Chris was running the wine production side of the house, and I was running the whole vineyard side of the house. And since it was just us, I was also the assistant winemaker too. So we did all the cellar work, we did all the vineyard work. Um, I had a vineyard crew. I had a crew of 8 people in the vineyard. I had a foreman, and the other 7 were all vineyard technicians. And super great experience with the crew. So for me, it was a challenge. Running a vineyard crew uh, for a guy just out of school and finishing up with school. And so I stepped into some pretty big shoes at that time. And I mean, getting familiar with tractors and vineyard spray programs and tilling and cover cropping and growing grapes. And, you know, at that time we were selling quite a bit of our grapes. And so that meant contracts and working with and getting to know a lot of the other wineries and vineyards that were buying Cherry Hill's Pinot Noir, which ended up being a huge door of opportunity to meet several people in the industry also over the years that continue until the time I even left in 2022. Um, but yeah, it was day to day. It was running the winery, running the vineyard, and being totally involved with every aspect that included the facilities maintenance, tractors maintenance, taking care of the vineyard crew, uh, everything you can imagine, you know. And so then my first harvest there was the 2006 vintage. And that was quite the experience. It was a full house. When I say that, I mean we filled every fermenter that we had. And at that time, let's see, we were producing close to 7,000 cases of wine a year was our production at that time at Cherry Hill. Um, so yeah, a lot of work, 12-hour days, 7 days a week, um, for almost 2 months straight. And I wasn't quite had anything that prepared me for that. Talk about a lot of moving parts. Um, but yeah, so between Chris and I at that time, it was just super busy, but super exciting. Um, I couldn't imagine doing anything else. And the opportunity to see the grapes come in from the field on the tractors, weighing them, filling the tanks, going through the fermentations, the whole process, the pressings. Um, we actually were making some Pinot Gris also so that we would have a white wine program there, which we purchased those grapes because we were only growing Pinot Noir at the Cherry Hill Vineyard site. And at that time, we purchased those grapes from Saginaw Vineyard, just outside of Eugene and Cottage Grove area at that time. Those were nice people, nice grapes, made some really nice Pinot Gris. We were also making a rosé of our own Pinot Noir grapes. And we were making three different labels of Pinot Noir for the Cherry Hill brand at that time. So we had five different wines that we were producing, and yeah, it was just super exciting and super hands on, and was having a ball.
You mentioned the amount of work, obviously, for first harvest. What kept you going? That kind of hours, that kind of work. What was exciting enough about it, or interesting enough about it, to keep you wanting to come back and do it again?
Well, I was at that time, I was already in love with the whole process. So I think that was probably the biggest part of it, as far as motivation to keep going. And also knowing that for the most part, it was a 5 day a week, 8 hour a day job for most of the year, other than bottling preparation, bottling, which would occur for a few weeks, and then the harvest time. So I figured, yeah, I can deal with this, and it's a tough row to hoe during harvest, but the beauty of it was always, as I remember, the very first Pinot Noir that was being finished fermenting in the tank, and it was time to get it pressed off and barrel down. And that first tank that was finished and went into the press, pressing the wine off from the the must and the grape material, and taking the wine glass and putting it right underneath the press and collecting that first glimpse, that first sight, that first smell and flavor of finished product, the Pinot Noir from that first tank, from that vintage, and getting to be a part of that at that first pressing and that first glass of wine to smell and look at and taste. So all the culmination of that whole growing season, from winter pruning right up until harvest, and that first pressing and barreling down, and that became the real motivation factor. So I think that then essentially you went through the whole growing season and production time just to get to that point. And that point was so big and so important, that I can't explain any other feeling, um, when it comes to completion. yeah, it's almost like your kid, you know. You you raised it out in the vineyard and brought it in and it grew up and all of a sudden, wow, here you go. It's in the glass, fully mature and yeah, super experience. Not to mention then, you know, um, the cellaring of the wines and their progress while they're in the barrels, um, uh, for between 11 months or 18 months, whatever your barrel program ends up being, the changes that the wines go through. Um, that's a whole nother story, but um, yeah, even just getting to that point is just super cool.
So tell me about the evolution of your career and your time at Cherry Hill. What were the kind of the steps along the way for you? And I'm also curious about sort of the big moments for you, some sort of from a confidence perspective or from a uh, uh, comprehension perspective. How long did it take you to feel like you understood what you were doing, you knew how to handle problems, you were ready for the next step?
Yeah, great question. And all of that did occur for me. So I would say I was starting to feel real comfortable probably about the third vintage in, so 2009 or thereabouts. Going through it three times, and kind of the same steps and being involved there since 2005. Um, and then in 2010, uh, Chris Luby, the then head winemaker at that time, he left us and went out and was working for a brand new project that came in the valley called Viridian at the time. And so Chris left. It seemed like a good opportunity for him to start with a brand new operation, a brand new company, um, as the head winemaker. And so at that time, Chris left, and I was approached by the owners of Cherry Hill, Mike and Jen Sweeney. Uh, Now, mind you, also, we had just come out of the 2008 uh, problematic. Um, the economy wasn't so great that everybody went through. Uh, all the wineries had inventory, that we couldn't sell because of the economy crash in 2008. So we were coming out of that, and that was a good thing. Um, so we had made some adjustments, I think, like a lot of people did at that time. So we went from our 7,000 case production level in the early years and had adjusted it back in 2008, 2009, and continuing forward. It never really rebounded into any more. We settled in at 2,000 cases of wine production. So quite a bit, less than half. And then the business model shifted into selling about 75% of our grapes to other uh, vineyards and wineries, and smaller production of wine being at the 2,000 case level. So things were a little different there at Cherry Hill coming out of the economy crash of 2008. And now with Chris Luby leaving, then the owners approached me and asked if I would be interested in taking over the entire uh, business. So being promoted from assistant winemaker to head winemaker, also continuing being the vineyard manager and managing the entire business, which, which sounds like a lot, and it was. But it was helpful that that our production level had adjusted down also. So it was manageable. Um, and upon Chris Luby's leaving, he was consulted from the owner's perspective and asked, what do you think? We offered Ken the head winemaking position, and Chris was kind, and we had a great relationship. And he conveyed to the ownership at that time that the decision to put Ken in charge of it all and become the head winemaker would probably be a good choice and would probably work out for the best. And so I was lucky in that respect, and I got to take over the entire situation, the entire business. Um, which I remained in that capacity from 2010 to 2022 when I left. Um, so then, it had been a different landscape for Cherry Hill as it was for the rest of us, as I mentioned, because of the economy and the way a lot of people shifted gears. And we built some new relationships external from Cherry Hill with our grape sales. We got really close with A to Z Wineworks and Rex Hill, and we sold quite a bit of our grapes to those folks. And what a great organization to be a partner with and to be a part of. That they were great to work for. And also in the winery and vineyard landscape, um, I had been approached to see if I would be interested in doing some cooperative work experience for the Chemeketa winemaking program and viticulture program for the students to come out and have an opportunity to get their cooperative work experience for their degree programs with the Chemeketa program. And I said I would enjoy nothing more than that. It would be my pleasure, since I was a Chemeketa warrior also from back in the day and was given ample opportunities when I left there myself. So then, believe it or not, the person that Nathan Litke that had mentioned me to you, he was my first person from the Chemeketa winemaking program to come out and work at Cherry Hill. He spent his summer there working in our tasting room, and he did a great job. Um, very approachable fellow, nice young man, smart, very capable. Helped me a lot in the cellar when things were needed also. And then, of course, stayed on for harvest also. So he was the main harvest intern at that time. I forget what year that was, but that might have been 2012 or 13. I can't remember now. But in any case, it was a very positive experience, and we had a great time with Nathan. And in the past, we had just brought in folks from our own vineyard to help with the harvest. But having an actual intern from a winemaking program and somebody with some knowledge and some hands-on experience and somebody who had a passion for wanting to be a winemaker, um, helping out with that was super helpful. I think not only for him but also for Cherry Hill as well. And after that, I continued with my interest and would go on to mentor several other Chemeketa folks that would come out and do their cooperative work experience with Cherry Hill, moving on from there. And it was a great experience also. So yeah, then for me, being in charge of the whole program and feeling to be a very confident winemaker and vineyard manager, it it went very well. We continued to expand our grape sales program to several other wineries and vineyards over the years. I had gotten to know quite a few people, and it was a very rewarding experience. Um, I got really close with several folks over the years because of that, and it worked out to work out really nice for Cherry Hill and everyone involved.
Tell me about balancing your work. Now that you're in charge of everything, tell me about keeping, I guess, keeping all those tables spinning and all those plates spinning. How did you kind of figure out how your year was going to work out? How did you figure out what you needed to focus on and when you needed to focus on it?
Yeah, well, so you know when the crash came and we adjusted things, the first thing that went was our office manager. So when that happened, it was just Chris and I kind of taking over a little bit bigger bite of the operation. And then when Chris left and it was just myself, well, at least I had had a taste of running the office and the other parts of the business other than just the production. But you know, believe it or not, it went really smooth, and I was able to divide my time fairly well between the vineyard and the winery regarding production. I will say that I had a great uh, vineyard foreman who was working for me. Guadencio Martinez was his name, and he was with me for about 6 years. And I think I started to lean on him a little bit heavier as his time with us increased, and that would help relieve a lot of the stuff that I used to take care of in the vineyard, and I kind of farmed a lot of that off to him. No pun intended with the term, but yeah. So I would give him a larger responsibility out in the vineyard with the crew. I was still quite a bit involved, with the spray programs and keeping us in the. I got us into the Salmon Safe and Live program um, some years earlier, and we kept up with that also with our sustainability model and sustainability standards. The owners didn't have any interest in organics, but they did buy off into the live program, which which I'm glad that they did because I always felt that that had held some importance, not only for uh, vineyard quality and vineyard sustainability, but also for the quality of grapes and the quality of wine, um, and our inputs. Uh, with different programs in the vineyard and different chemistries that we would use to a more sustainable approach. So yeah, it ended up just being, I think, a better relationship with the vineyard crew in general, having more involvement with my foreman and giving him more of an opportunity to take care of a lot of the stuff in the vineyard um, that he was capable of doing, and that freed up my hands and some of my time to concentrate more in wine production. that and also with the lower production level of 2,000 cases versus where we started at 7,000 cases. During that time, we sold a lot of fermenters and downsized a lot of the things that we were doing in the wine cellar and in production. So we kind of leveled out, I think. And also, I think it lent us to produce better quality wines, honestly. Um, we were uh, healthier in the vineyard. We were getting higher yields. The vines were healthier. The grape chemistry was coming up and was getting better and better. And we were producing better wines. Um, you know, and I think that obviously was one of my goals was being in charge of the whole program. I mean, Cherry Hill, the site was a beautiful property between 250 and 500 feet in elevation. Wonderful soils. We had sedimentary soils in the lower altitudes of the property and more volcanic soils up in the upper elevations. So it enabled us to get a lot of different grape qualities and different areas of the vineyard would produce different fruits and different qualities and enable us to do some better blending techniques and better even isolation techniques as to which vineyard blocks were producing the best fruit. Um, yeah, I mean, looking back, uh, from when I took over the whole program, beginning with the 2009 vintage bottling, the cellaring, and everything. We had seven vintages of Cherry Hill Pinot Noirs that all scored above 90 points, between 90 and 93 points in publication between Wine Spectator, Wine Enthusiast, and so on and so forth. So I think that you know, the due diligence and making improvements to the vineyard health, um, and also the smaller production enabled us between those two things to produce better wines. And I think that spoke a lot for the potential, I think, of Cherry Hill as a site and as a quality producer, which is what the owners were looking for when they picked that property up. And I think they were really happy. Our relationship was from the beginning to basically the time I left was very positive, very involved. We got very close, myself and my wife at the time with the Sweeneys, the owners of Cherry Hill. It was couldn't have asked for a better arrangement, really. For me, I mean, the owners lived in Indiana, in Carmel, Indiana, so they would they would come out in April and leave right after harvest in October, and then it was me pretty much by myself. Uh, to take care of the winery and vineyard through the winter until they would return in the springtime. And yeah, it was a good arrangement, and it ended up working itself out in a very positive way. And yeah, it was a super experience. I think everybody from the owners to the vineyard crew um, to myself and production standards, everybody benefited. Um, we made strides to take care of the vineyard folks as well as we could. Some of that started when we initiated with the live program. And we also got fairly involved with Salud, the health program that helps look after a lot of the vineyard folks. They would come out and do their wellness checks twice a year to Cherry Hill. We were on their route, and a lot of our folks and our vineyard folks would take advantage of the free and low cost services that were provided with Salute. And I mean, we got to keep those people happy. They work their ass off for us, and you know, you can't have quality grapes without quality vineyard personnel. And so, yeah, and I truly think that is also a big part of it. And I think that to be successful, you got to take care of your people, um, whether them being in the vineyard or in the winery with you, your harvest interns and your help. And it always seems to come down to the people, right? You got to take care of your people, and you got to have people do what you need them to do for you. And I wouldn't have done it a different way had I had the opportunity. For whatever reason it was, things fell into place for me in my experience in the 17 years that I was involved at Cherry Hill, but in the 20 years that I was involved in the Oregon wine industry in general. Um, Nothing but positive experience throughout the growth of the industry. The people that were involved, super good people, as you, I'm sure, are well aware of, and in your position there. Um, and wow, little bit off subject, but I had no idea that you guys uh, moved up to university level. Back in the day, it was Linfield College. So what
Yep.
a cool thing that must be for you guys and your programs and involvement, not only in the Oregon wine industry, but I know a lot of the stuff that you guys started out. I can remember um, when having a brain fart here. The Abasella family,
Greg Jones.
Greg Jones, thank you very much. When Greg Jones moved up there from Southern Oregon University and started doing his work with you guys, and it looks like, I mean, the increments that you guys were working into and into what you guys are now, that's tremendous also, and super beneficial to the industry and everybody else involved. And look at this. Here you've got, you said 1,000 interviews. What a cool archive to have. I don't, I didn't even know that existed until you reached out to me via email or a text message on that. And I was just blown away. I thought, how cool is that? To be able to talk to all these people involved and to be able to archive it and make that available to anybody that's interested and actually get to listen to and or view a lot of the players that were involved. It's super cool.
Well, thank you so much for that. And yes, it's been a really cool project. We became a university in July of 2020. There were a few other things going on in the world at that point, and it managed to evade a lot of people's radars. So
And
yes, Linfield University for about 5 years now, and
wow,
expanded programs and all of that. Um, I've got a couple questions left for you to wrap this up.
absolutely.
You talked about your the kind of the growth you saw in Oregon wine. I'm curious if you can, outside of just how big Oregon wine grew during the time you were in it, tell me about the changes you saw. What evolved? What was different about the industry when you left it versus when you started it?
Wow, yeah. I think one of the main things, not that I would have expected it to be any different, but one of the main things that I would take away and that I was seeing is a changing of the guard, so to speak. Have seen a lot of the old school, um, original folks that kind of got the wine industry momentum really going, you know, through the 80s, 90s, and early 2000s. And now you've got their replacements. You have a plethora of new wineries and vineyards and people, of course, which, are that's the whole thing. And so I see out there that it's so cool that there is a whole new genre of young people, um, taking over and getting involved, and the passion I think that I've seen in the younger folks getting involved and this younger generation coming up is, very, very satisfying. Um, I'm super excited that it's going that direction. I mean, it could have just tended to fizzle out, and it didn't. The interest remains high, and getting the young people involved and with their passions in, making the Oregon wine industry, what it is today, as great as it is. And that encompasses, I think, everything, not just the quality of the wines, which is wow. I mean, you know, back in the day it was California this, California that, and Oregon was always, kind of up and coming, so to speak. We're there, man. And it's due to the work of not only those that began the process, but it certainly continues today with the new generation of folks that are taking over, and they have new ideas, um, new ways of doing things, and I think that Oregon wine industry is just headed into a whole new direction, from my last days in it, until I left Cherry Hill in 2022, November 2022, and retired. And then I went right back and spent the 2023 harvest at Left Coast Cellars. uh, Joe over there, it ended up being a very good friend of mine. And I was kind of bored, and I had reached out to Joe Wright over there and said, "Hey, Joe, it's Ken from Cherry Hill. I left back in November. I've been sitting around. You got anything going for this harvest?" And he said, "Yeah, as a matter of fact, I do." So that ended up being a really cool experience for me too, was to go work with Joe Wright for a harvest, for Harvest 2023. I worked there from August through the end of October, and it was just a super cool experience to go through that at a completely different facility and see how they do things a completely different way. And yeah, it was super cool. And Joe's just a really cool dude, anyways. Jesus, we used to sell grapes to Joe Wright back when he worked for Belvalet back in 2006 and 2007. He was buying Cherry Hill grapes for then, before he went over to Left Coast and worked for Luke over there. Um, but yeah, they're doing some really neat stuff, and I just, on that tangent, really enjoyed um, having that little break in the middle between me leaving Cherry Hill and then coming back in for an extra harvest in 2023, and doing that with Joe over at Left Coast Cellars. Super good experience. He had some young people working with us in the cellar there. and it was also a good experience. So yeah, it was a chance for me uh, to work with some of these newer folks and get a handle on their perspective and their ideas also. Yeah.
What else have you been up to in retirement?
It's been pretty low key, really. I actually got divorced. Um, that was back in a little over a year and a half ago in 2024. But since then, um, my stepfather passed away a couple years back, and so my mom has been living here in Bend by herself. She's 84 and doing quite well, actually. But the opportunity came up um, since I was retired and divorced to come out here and live with my mom over in Bend. So it's been a neat experience to be here, and we've been working on projects at the house, and I put a garden in the backyard, growing lots of good stuff to eat, and have some great neighbors that live right next door. They've got some young uh, teenage kids, and who I've befriended quite a bit. And lo and behold, uh, the boy next door, he's into model airplanes and RC airplanes and model rockets. So I've gotten involved with that with him, with my aviation background prior to the wine industry. And that's been really fun. So I'm just taking it easy and enjoying being here in Central Oregon and hanging out with my mom. And life is good at the moment. Yeah.
Are there any more harvests in your future?
Well, I don't think so, but you never know. I can remember way back, and I forgot who said it. It might have been Richard Cutler back at the Flying Dutchman. Um, but I was always told you only got so many harvests in you. And before you get too old. And those 12-hour days, 7 days a week for 2, 3 months straight is it's quite demanding. And I was 60 in 2022 and then 61 in 2023 when I did my last harvest. So I don't know. I'm gonna say probably not, but you never know. Somehow that bug tends to bite in strange ways, you know. And there's actually some projects going on over here in Central Oregon. Um, I can remember years ago, gosh, maybe 2007-ish, I met the Marigus family over here. They had a tasting room downtown Bend, and at that time they were just beginning planting some vines over here outside of Terrebonne, which is actually just 20 minutes down the road from where I'm living at the moment. And there's a large organization out here called Faith Hope and Charity. You probably heard of that one. They have their own vines and winemaking. So there's a few folks doing it out here, and they're growing vines. I haven't kept tabs probably as much as I should or could have on, a lot of it was in the early progress. They were doing experimenting as to which varieties or which clones or hybrids were doing well in Central Oregon with the uh, late frosts and early frosts and so on and so forth. But it sounds like they got a pretty good handle on it. I know they're harvesting grapes and they're making Central Oregon wine from field to glass. So I think that that's a really cool thing. And at some point, I might have to venture out and do a little more poking around here in Central Oregon and see how things are going.
All right, last couple questions for you. I'm curious about as you look back, what's your proudest accomplishment? What's your greatest achievement? What do you look back on with the most pride, whether that's in wine or outside?
Wow, great question. I think I'm not sure proud, but very happy with the choices that I made in my life looking back. Um, wow. I was very lucky, I think. Um, Being an aircraft mechanic for 16 years, 10 years of that being in the Air Force. My experience in that whole 16 years was fantastic. I had a great time. I traveled a lot. I loved what I did. I loved my job at that time. Saw a lot of different parts of the world. And then getting into kind of my second career of the wine industry. Wow, it was what I wanted to do. Um, After kind of burning out in aviation, it was like, that next, what do you want to do next? And this became that. Uh, Getting into the Oregon wine industry, and it's been the greatest experience that I could ever ask for or be a part of. Um, doesn't get much better than that, I think. You know, when we try to decide what we all want to do with our time and our lives and such, what a great way to do it and a great place to be in. So I would say that was the greatest accomplishment with just um, selecting the right path and enjoying that path the entire time, from start to finish, um, with with my life and everything else that's accomplished with it, with the family and everything. Wouldn't have done it any different if I had another chance.
I love that. I'm so glad to hear it. Last question. What's the best wine you ever made?
Wow. Um, you know, the publications gave me the highest score for the 2013 um, vintage, but I didn't agree with that back in the day. They gave us 93 points for that. It was 100% Pomard blend. Um, it's a nice wine. Cooler vintage though. I tend to gravitate towards some of the more extracted wines. So I'm gonna say, oh wow. Are we talking out of the context of Cherry Hill or the wines that I made?
The best wine
Um,
you ever made, any context.
Best wine I ever made was the 2015 Pomard blend at Cherry Hill. Um, when it comes to maybe the best Pinot that I had or best wine, wow, I'm reaching here. But I'm gonna say it was probably a 1998 Rex Hill Pinot Noir. I remember when I was here in 2000 doing my scouting mission of the Willamette Valley, we were drinking all of the 98 and 99 wines at all the wineries that we went to. And when I went to Rex Hill and I tasted those 98 Pinots, um, they were killer, man. Um, just the color in the glass, the aromatics and the flavors just blew me away. And I'll always remember that fondly. The 98 Pinots from Rex Hill. Um, but for myself, the 2015 Cherry Hill Estate Pinot Noir. 100% Pomard. Yum.
That was a really good year, 2015. That's a good year. A lot of good wines in 2015.
Yeah, I totally agree. It was warmer, a lot of wines, really ripe fruit, lots of concentration, really really nice wines. Yeah, totally agree.
Well, excellent. All the questions that I have for you today. Anything I didn't ask that I should have? Anything we didn't talk about today that you were hoping to talk about?
Sweet. Um, I can't really think of anything else that I would have to share. I think we covered quite a bit. Um, but just a final question to you, just maybe a quick little summary as to where you guys are in your winemaking program, um, considering that you're doing this archival, and I know that you guys have made a lot of changes, and your program is growing. How are things in that respect there at Linfield?
They're going well. Let me wrap up the interview and the recording, and then I'll answer your question afterward if that's okay with you.
Absolutely.
All right. Well, thank you so much for joining us. Thank you for sharing your story with us. We really appreciate you taking the time today and sharing your wholly unique story. Very, very interesting. Thank you, and we're gonna go ahead and let you off the hook.
Yeah, thank you, Rich. I really appreciate you taking the time to do this and share some moments with me. And hello to Abby back there in the background if she's still hanging out. And thanks again, Rich. Much
Thank you very
appreciated.
much.